Well, hello, welcome back. I'm Brian, and you're watching Frugal Footprint. In this episode of this video series, I'm going to be building the doors for our patio furniture bin. It's going to be very similar to what we did with the back and the sides, essentially cutting down these 2x4s to build the frame, and then cutting out the plywood to face them. We won't be attaching them in this video. I'll do a separate video where we attach all of the hardware for the entire thing. And then I'm also going to be cutting out the lid that goes on the top of this. And again, be sure to head over to frugalfootprint.com to grab a copy of the designs to follow along at home and build yourself a bin just like this one. All right, let's get to it. All right, that's the end of the miter saw for this project. Let's get these frames put together and then we'll cut out the plywood. All right, I have the door frames behind me. Similar to all the other parts, I'm going to be using these 3-inch screws into the corners just to hold these together until I can get the plywood on there, which is really going to be what holds the doors together. One down, one to go. All right, let's get that plywood cut out. So this is actually the piece of plywood that's left over from the back. And what I'm gonna do is just cut off the pieces that I don't need. This is the bit we'll use. I have it all measured up, snapped my chalk line, and we're gonna cut it out with the jigsaw again. So that's one done. I'm gonna do the second one. The second one is coming from a full sheet of plywood, which will be the other piece that we use for the lid. Again, go to frugalfootprint.com to get your copy of the design and build one of these for yourself. Okay, so this is the last full sheet of plywood. I'm gonna be cutting it right at the 5 foot 5.5 inches, which leaves 2 foot 6.5 inches on that side. It's the perfect cut because I only have to do one. This side is gonna be the lid. This side is gonna be one of the other doors. I'll have to cut off different amounts of each of them to make the lid nice and narrow and make the door wide, but I have it all measured out and I'm gonna cut it out with the jigsaw. All right, we have both our doors cut out. We're gonna pivot by just going and affixing them to the door frames. And then we'll be back to cut out the rest of this, which is gonna be the lid. Okay, so here is the plywood for the door that we just cut out. Underneath is the frame, you can't see it. So this is where the door meets the other door. It's like French doors, right? And this side is gonna be perfectly flush. This up here, this is the top of the door. That's gonna be perfectly flush as well. On this side, there's gonna be a 1/2 inch overhang. This is where the hinges are gonna be, and this 1/2 inch overhang on the plywood, that lines up with the side of the bin. And down here on the bottom, we're gonna have the same overlap of about 1 inch where it covers up the floor and the floor frame, kind of like we had with the back and the sides. Now, the thing to keep in mind is I actually cut the frame about 1/8 of an inch shorter than I did the back and the sides, just so we have that 1/16 inch of clearance on the top and the bottom so the doors can swing freely. So we're gonna use the same 1 1/4 inch screws that we used for the rest of the siding, put a handful along each edge, and then we'll do the same for the other door, and that'll be that. All right, that's one down. The other one's gonna be the exact same, just opposite. I'm gonna do that one off camera and then I'll be back to cut out the lid. Both doors are done. I'm gonna move on to the lid. All right, so this is the last piece of plywood here. It's the offcut from one of the doors. It's already the length I want because once we cut off the door, the rest of the 8-foot piece is exactly the length I need for the lid. So guess what? You win some sometimes. Isn't it great? So this is the piece I'm keeping. I'm gonna zip a line down here. This will just be extra. And then one last thing I'm gonna do is use a compass to make a rounded edge, just like you see on this table below. I'm gonna do the same thing for the lid. And then we'll be done with cutting for the project. All right, let's get to it. All right, I have my handy compass here from middle school art class. What I have done is set it to 2 inches, and then you basically just measure 2 inches in and 2 inches in from this point, and then that's where this part goes, and then you draw a semicircle on the edge. Just have our semicircle and then cut that out with the jigsaw, and we're just gonna do the same thing for all 4 corners. Nice and clean, looks great. I'll come back through with sandpaper and just clean this up a bit. Gonna go ahead and do the other corners, and then we'll be done with all of the power saws for this project. Hey, there it is. So obviously we don't have any hinges on here yet. This is just floating here. The doors are just floating here. But this is gonna be the end of this video. And the next one, we're gonna be sealing it up with a bead of caulking around all of the edges and all of the seams. I'm gonna paint it, and then we're going to be installing all of the hardware. We have hinges for the doors, we have latch for the doors, we have some soft close hinges for the lid. I'm excited about that. So go ahead, hit the like button. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe and stay tuned for the next video. I'll see you then.